So I just saw a message on the Facebook page of our county's health department. And like a lot of things that I've been seeing lately, I found it a bit disturbing. Actually, not a bit disturbing, very disturbing. Because it showed that our county had created a hotline. Not a, suicide hotline where you call if someone needs help. Um, but a hotline that at least appears to be encouraging normal, everyday citizens in the county to call and act as anonymous informants about other normal, everyday citizens in the county who they thought might not be following the honestly rather ambiguous social distancing and wearing a mask and is your business closed or is it essential regulations slash laws. It's very unclear. There's a lot of literature circling in the state and in the county, and it's unclear. First of all, what these regulations are, which ones are laws, which ones are suggestions, and the penalties are unclear. Some seem to indicate that there are heavy fines associated with violations of these, again, laws or suggestions. Hopefully at least fines are associated with laws, not suggestions. But then there are also indications that there may be hefty jail times. I saw something up to 18 months in a jail for what appeared to be violating, like going out in public with a mask, but then as you continue to read, it seems as though, well, no, this is just for retail services and employees of retail services. But there's a lot of confusion whether it's just retail services or whether it is, in fact, for the general public. And even if it is just for retail services, the fact that it is so unclear who this affects, what the penalties are, and then the fact that we're just rolling out encouragement of essentially ratting out our neighbors who we think are violating some kinds of regulations that we as a citizenry don't have full grasp of ourselves. Right? Some people say, well, it's fine to go for a drive. You just can't stop anywhere. Some people say, no, you can't. Some people say, you can go walk your dog. Some people say, no, you can't go walk your dog. Some people say, well, as long as you stay on your own property, you're fine. Others say, no, you actually have to stay inside your home. And of course, you can say, well, people say, but you need to look up the legislation, and that's true. But there's so much confusion, even when you do read the legislation and the edicts and the mandates. And I do work in several different states, I guess, and countries, even if I don't have to go there physically all the time. I work with them, and so I've been reading the different mandates. A lot of similar language, but all unclear when it counts. But what's disturbing is that we have, at least in this county and city officials that I understand must be under an immense amount of pressure, political pressure from their constituencies, political pressure from their superiors, from who they view as their peers, to do everything, go every which way. Of course, whoever they are have a political slant themselves, and therefore there's pressure within that camp. But either way, it's pressure to either back off completely, let's let the biological free market handle this, or it's to clamp down completely. The citizenry is infantile and need to be kept in a crib for their own good, and everything in between. I understand it's got to be an extremely stressful time. It's extremely stressful as someone who runs a business. In a business that doesn't even employ that many people. To be running an entire county with so much diversity and so many things going on, it would be incredible. However, I would like to think that our leaders have a certain amount of wisdom. I would like to think that they are steeped in a certain amount of history and literature and, of course, common sense and economics and they had to realize that even a somewhat informed society like what we have would read that type of language and immediately images of the Third Reich or Stalin, or pick your dictator of the 20th century, would pop into their minds. And maybe you could say that they thought, well, yeah, but so be it. This is for the safety of the people, and we think this is the right call, and this is the best way to go about it. Now, I'd have concerns if you thought this was the best way to go about it, but maybe you thought that. And so you said, well, let's go for it anyway. Good Lord. If you thought let's go for it anyway, could you couch it differently? Just anything that doesn't conjure up, just straight up, literal. I don't mean the political Nazis we talk about now because they didn't vote for you or whatever. I mean literal Nazis. That's like what they were known for. Turning people against each other. You can't trust your next door neighbor who you're supposed to be able to go and borrow butter from. You can't trust your next door neighbor because if they see you doing something they don't like, or because this is where it goes, right? And this is what everyone knows. No one's really maybe they're concerned that, okay, so the law is wear a mask, and I go out without a mask, and then someone calls and says, hey, you ought to be wearing a mask. Yeah, that's annoying, but I can see you'd be annoyed on the other end if you're seriously concerned about a virus. And you think the way to stop this virus is to everyone wears masks, because then that mimics this like herd immunity type thing. If everyone's wearing a mask, even if you have it, you can't spread it, and then, okay, and you see someone without a mask, that's infuriating. You're putting so many people at risk. Okay, so be it with that. But anyone who's past the age of 6 realizes that's not where it stops. And it doesn't even take long to keep going. And don't even try to call me out on some slippery slope fallacy. This is a real thing. Everyone knows this is a real thing. And it doesn't stop there. It starts there, or it starts under the guise of that. But within weeks, you know, the baser ones of us are going to realize, hey, that works pretty well. I can anonymously inform the authorities that so-and-so isn't doing their part, and they'll crack down on them. Man, I wonder if this works if I call in because my neighbor's dog barks too much. Or maybe their kids are always screaming and it keeps me up at night because I work nights or something. And eventually it gets to, you know what? I don't like that guy's face. I'm gonna say that I saw him without a mask in the wrong place, or he's not an essential worker. And then it really gets scary when they say, you know what? My neighbor's always had a nicer car than me. And yeah, I piss my money away on, beer and whatever. And I could have a nice car, but I don't. And he saved it, and he has a nice car, and that just makes me mad. I don't like him because he's got a nice car. I'd love to see something bad happen to him. You know what? I think I saw him at Walmart the other day without a mask. Yeah, that's it. Everyone knows this is where that goes. So, why would you go down that road? There's got to be a better way. The thing is, in this county is known for being very friendly, very open, very chatty at the tills with the cashier and the whatever. People tend to know, not the whole neighborhood like the 50s or something, but people tend to know their neighbors. People tend to be friendly with their neighbors and collaborate as a community. All of those traits indicate that if a true case was made that people were suffering, right? Which there's a pretty good case to be made that there are people suffering. But then that these measures were thoroughly thought through, and that they had a direct impact on either those that are suffering or preventing others from suffering in the future. If you could make a case for the suffering and a case for these types of measures preventing and mitigating suffering, I think this community would be all over it. All over it. Right? People here love each other. That's why people come in droves from all over the country to retire here, to raise their kids here. Because there are places where people literally don't care at all. You could be dying and bleeding out on the sidewalk, and they would walk and step over you. And then they'd look down to make sure the cuff of their pants didn't get dirty while they stepped over you. I've lived in places like that. A lot of you have lived in places like that. That's why you're not there anymore. That's why you're here. If our officials got up and made a sincere case for what they were doing and that it would help, instead of looking like they were just pandering to some type of minority group who feels really strongly about something, or caving to peer pressure, right? Because we didn't hire you. Now I get it that there's a mix of elected and unelected officials making a lot of decisions. But those that are elected, we didn't hire you, and those that are unelected, um, we hope that you weren't hired to just parrot what your peers in other counties and other states and other countries are saying and doing. Because if that's what you did, we don't need you. Um, all we need is a state government then, if everything fits all. All we need is a federal government, right? So we need a local government that understands the local needs and understands what's going on the ground level and makes decisions for the people that hired them. And again, you could say, well, this is a decision for you, and it's for your best interest. That may be the case, but then you should also know your audience, understand how they're going to perceive it, understand that they're not stupid. They are your peers. We're all adults. We don't hold your particular position, but you won't hold it forever, and some of us will in the future. We're your peers. You're not stupid. We're not stupid. We can work together on this issue. It's a scary issue. I totally get the temptation to just knee-jerk stuff. I totally get it, right? All of us that run businesses, you're terrified. Am I doing enough to take care of my workers? Am I doing enough to take care of the public that I interact with? Am I going to be perceived as overreacting and therefore losing respect from some of my clientele and some of my employees? Or am I going to be perceived as being too lax and therefore losing the trust and respect of some of my clientele and some of my employees? I get it. But holy cow, there's got to be a better way than to just trigger the whole county with images of the Third Reich. I'm sorry. Could you perhaps reach out with some more human language, at least indicating that, hey, we have thought this through. We are confident that we are not going down that kind of a road. And we understand your fears, but this is why you shouldn't be afraid. Because we are thoughtful individuals in here making thoughtful decisions in your best interest. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear if it's working. Yes, of course, we want to be able to measure how our policies are being implemented, how they're being followed, but creating a culture where people are encouraged to eventually lie about each other, because we all struggle with envy, and we all struggle with pride and ego to varying amounts. We all struggle with repentance, and therefore there's going to be so much lying about who is not following what regulation, just because we want revenge for the time when Susie didn't let me join her cool girls club in the 6th grade. That's just a guarantee. And you know that. And so there's got to be something else. This is why, our country and our states, our counties are framed in certain ways. We've got millennia of human history to tell us how these things are going to go. And many smart people in the past have been tempted to make laws and rules like this. And one of the reasons why our country stands out is because, for the most part, we have refrained from giving in to that temptation. And refraining from that has given us the type of freedom that has created such a high quality of life. It's not even funny. And whenever countries forget that, or whenever individuals forget that, and they start thinking, well, I'm a good person, I watch out for my fellow human being, I should have ultimate power. Even if that were true, and you know that's not true, even about you, the temptation to make uh, self-interest a priority is just too great. But even if that were true, you can't give that position that you hold certain kinds of power because you're going to die or you're going to move on. And maybe your son or the person that inherits that position is just as good as you. But somewhere down the line, someone's not going to be as good as you. And then you or future generations are going to regret that power. They're going to rue the day you ever gave that position that kind of power. So we've learned that type of stuff over and over and over again. So when we're looking at these types of things, yes, I understand. You want to know if people are disobeying these regulations because you think if disobeying these regulations is going to have dire consequences for the community. I get that. But there's got to be a different way. Let's talk about what that different way might be. Please.